CityWorks Expo is a collaborative, co-creative, and multidisciplinary idea exchange and festival conference that happens each fall in Roanoke, Virginia. By day, attendees are immersed in thought-provoking presentations, riveting performances, and engaging dialogue. By night, the conference continues with after-hours networking opportunities during street festivals, parties, and musical events. To learn more about Expo, visit cityworksexpo.com. Expo 2014 was made possible by these fine sponsors.
All right, I was really excited to see some Harrisonburg people here. So Harrisonburg, who's here? Yeah, all right. Okay, so the first thing I want you to start to think about is, I want you to think about idiots. I'd like you to imagine what an idiot looks like. If you saw the title of my talk, you might think it's me. Do you have an image in your head, maybe a name? What is an idiot? So if I tripped, over my feet, hit my head on the stage, or if I dropped my papers all over the place, which I might do, you might call me an idiot. Some people would use idiot for that, right? Does anybody know the original meaning of idiot? It was actually an individual who was not aware of local politics of the area. And today we talk about it like somebody who might not be wearing matching socks. It goes to show how much we've attacked local political participation. So in my work, regardless of the title that I've held or what goals we're trying to accomplish, I've been both the idiot in the newer sense of the term, and while I'm working with other people and myself to encourage us to not be idiots in the original sense of it. So, I'm actually going to have only 3 glorious failures because I needed to squeeze it into this time frame. But this is a tweet that I tweeted out a couple years back. And with a background in sociology, people often say things like this to me. They often laugh and ask me sarcastically, I guess that degree was really useful. And I say, it was. Rooted in sociology, my work is informed by coalition building, which I learned from studying social movements in critical theory. Coalition building, for anybody who's involved in this work, and I'm sure so many people in this room are, is really just an age-old way of getting shit done with people. A couple of things that people don't know about me is, one, I'm a twin. How adorable. We were both adopted, and this is actually on the left, the earliest picture that we have of ourselves when we were in a foster home. And our birth mother was Puerto Rican, although I clearly don't really look like that. So these various dual identities that I've held really inform the person that I am, my worldview, and the way that I see the work in the world. So, a couple of years back, well, actually last year, my twin brother designed these business cards. He actually printed 250 of these bad boys. What am I going to do with that? You can read it. It's a Suzi Carter, I run shit. I don't really run anything. So they were hilarious just at face value. And you can imagine the Facebook engagement we got from this. It was really fun. But it did inspire the title of my talk and really made me think about the stories that we tell and then the stories that we don't tell about who we are and our work in the world. People often say, oh, there's this new project, how do we get it off the ground? Or your project needs a Suzi, or you need to talk to Suzi about getting this project done. And it made me think of the term poesis. It's where we get our term for poetry. And it basically translates into to make. So while people often think of me, who know me well, often think of me as a doer, as somebody who gets stuff done, I actually see myself as a creator, as a maker of things, the way that a poet would speak about writing a poem, the way that a painter may speak about painting a painting. So of course we can speak of victories and defeats, but rather than being outcome-oriented only, I want you to think about our work as a constant and fluid process of production and reproduction. So as I attempt to deconstruct how I've made these things, a vibrant community space, a food co-op, a greenway, it makes me think about my own process and how I arrived here. Sure, my resume paints a really pretty picture without struggle or doubt, But when I look back, I see a lot of mistakes and some really glorious failures. So with Faulkner in mind, I want us to think about how we can not succeed perfectly, but to fail beautifully. So here in chronological order, here are a few of my glorious failures that created my success. Okay, so anybody here ever taken a job where you acted like you were extremely qualified, but actually knew no idea what you were doing? Awesome, you'll appreciate this one. So in early 2010, I found myself at a friend's house at a potluck, as many of you might often be, surrounded by a group of friends who we were coined the downtown cynics. I don't typically think of myself as a cynical person, but we were with some young professional friends, and seated next to me was the current outreach coordinator for this new food co-op project that was happening in town. And friends around the table just darted questions at her, just railing this project. And she was so poised. She impressed me so much. She had thoughtful, inspiring responses. So much so that by the end of the night, she said she was moving to Michigan, and I said, I want to move into your job. So the very next day, I worked on my resume, I sent it out to the board president, and a week later, I had an interview. During that interview, he said, well, this outreach coordinator position was going to kind of be focused on membership building, but it's going to change a little bit. I said, okay, what do you got? And, well, I was probably more formal than that, but, for the sake of the story. And he said, well, we were going to do more membership building and events and communication, but it looks like we're really short in our capital campaign, so we're going to need some help there. I said, sure, sounds like a great challenge. I can't wait. He seemed really delighted by my ease. Little did he know, when I got off the phone, I immediately Googled capital campaign. Oh my word, I had no idea what I got into. And then the next week I was hired. So one of my first assignments on this new job that I was very confident about was to send out an inspirational and informative email to all of our members, about 600 at the time, about how we were launching this big fundraising campaign and that we needed their help. I remember being so excited, I spent hours all night after my daytime job working on this email. I wanted to get the tone just right. I didn't want to really push the money thing really hard. So I spent a lot of time talking about the beautiful changing seasons and our farmers events and how people were going to be really excited about the things that we had going on, and then snuck in some words about the capital campaign. So after feeling pretty pleased with myself, at about 2 in the morning, I sent it off to the campaign chair, and I went home. The next morning, I opened my email. These are some folks that we worked with. And this is what my email subject line said. Literally with caps. This is all wrong. No niceties. And then he proceeded to put a series of highlights and corrections and a request to a bunch of editors to do a complete rewrite ASAP. That's right, so there was like 3 other people on the email that just saw my complete embarrassment. I started shaking. I really wanted to cry. I was devastated. I thought, this is not the job for me. How did I get this so wrong? How am I ever going to make this campaign happen? I have no idea what I'm doing, and it's that moment we all fear, right? That we're found out, that people know that we are fraud. So, by the end of the day, one of the editors, who we had Rosetta Stone in our town, fantastic editor, she did a complete rewrite, and it was exquisite. I mean, I just sat there with my jaw down. It was beautiful. She was so good. It was to the point, it was warm, kind of funny, really inviting. I mean, I wanted to help, and I was already helping. And then I realized something really important, was that this campaign had nothing to do with me, and I wasn't going to make this campaign happen. We were all going to make this campaign happen, right? Very cliche, but it took that moment for it to really sink in. So I needed to trust other people to make these things happen, and that's when I focused my energy on building teams of skill sets, and I set my sights on finding and motivating the right people to accomplish our goals. So the fun part, how did we actually do it? These are just a series of pictures through our campaign. And one of the most important things when we think about coalition building and bringing new people and the people that we're working with to the table, it's really important to have face-to-face interaction, as you know. And the project that we were working on had actually been carrying on for nearly 5 years. So people had become really tired. They lost the momentum in the project. And so we really needed to raise about $400,000 more in 2 months. And we said, we're going to do it. And so we got people together for a series of forums, and we called them the Big Five. We needed people to come to the table to come up with the big 5 ideas that were going to raise the money to push this project forward, to sign the lease, and to open up our grocery store downtown. And we did it. We did it. We got people to those events, and we didn't do it just by sending out emails or sending home flyers. We made personal connections. We made personal phone calls. We prioritized. We sent personal emails. We begged. And people showed up. We had about 75 people come to those events, and they were the ones who led the committees through that campaign, which we called 330. By that time, we had $300,000 left to raise. So, here's where a series of small house parties to raise money in people's homes. Fortunately, we live in a small town, a little bit smaller, clearly, than Roanoke, and so there's not a lot of news going on. There's not a lot of, if it bleeds, it leads. It's not happening. So we were really able to make free press and fundraising happen through our media. We had a very visual campaign on the future site, which actually tracked our progress, which people love to see. And this is opening day with our general manager, and yes, that's a carrot on rollerblades. And this is the festival that we had for our grand opening a month later. All right, so switching gears a little bit, next project I want to talk about, and my glorious failure, was with the North End Greenway. So, any urban planners, designers, people that work on city-level projects here? Great, you will really appreciate this one. So while working to fundraise money for the North End Greenway, which is a linear park and a bicycling and walking path through the center of our town, we discovered that the city was really only interested in the actual construction of the asphalt itself. So I became the de facto project manager for more of the design elements, really the things that were going to bring this project to life. And so what did we do? We said, all right, we're going to pull together a volunteer committee, and these folks will become our landscape design committee. We were thrilled. I think we had 2 engineers, 2 architects, 2 landscape designers, 2 landscapers, which I learned are different, 1 city planner, 2 university professors, an art historian, and a bike advocate. And all these people were so excited to be on this committee, giving up their volunteer hours. We were just thrilled. So we brought everybody together for the first meeting. And I've never experienced this before, but you could cut the tension with a knife. There was something clearly wrong with either this room or these people, or it was me, I smelled, I don't know. And I had no idea what was going on. But by the end of the meeting, pretty much within 24 hours, I had half the committee contacting me, wanting to have personal sit-downs to talk about the committee, which really meant they wanted to talk about why other people on the committee were not the right people. Whew, okay, so personal politics at play here. So I stepped into a lot of history that I didn't know about. And by the second meeting, I thought, you know what, everybody's professionals here. We'll bring everybody back to the table. We'll air some of this. We're going to work through it. You know where this is going. So at the second meeting, there was yelling. There were verbal attacks being thrown across the table. Also dealing with a lot of old white men, no offense. We had a lot of ego going on. And I thought that I'm pretty good at mediating. No, there was nothing I could do in this moment. We cut the meeting short. We left. It was a mess. And the worst part was that the person I was closest with was the private engineer on the project, and he was infuriated with me. So what happened? Well, I was really interested in bringing together people that hadn't been typically involved in bicycle projects. I wanted to bring them to the table to be engaged in this larger conversation. But what I didn't pay attention to was the politics that were at play, and I moved too quickly. I didn't go to the people who were involved first. The people that were involved first were so tied to this project. Their values were so aligned. It was at the core of who they were. And so it was a personal affront when I had invited other people that did not share their values to the table. And that's powerful. That's really powerful, and that's what sort of exploded. I could have uncovered those politics had I taken the time to really sit down and have one-on-one conversations and really work with the people most affected first. So in the end, the committee disbanded, fortunately. I put my tail between my legs and made a lot of apologies to reestablish relationships. And I learned that when you're trying to build support for a project, it's not just about getting people to the table, right? It's not just about the quantity. People still want to be heard and respected and valued. And I took for granted that even though everybody was professionals, that I forgot that they're really just people first. So to flip it a little bit and to focus on some of the things that did work really well, which was exciting, was the fundraising part. Well, we set our fundraising target on City Council. And this was the current bike plan that was happening in our project. And so we were looking to do a bike project and a park project that was happening in a linear fashion. And we were trying to focus it, ooh, I can use this. We were trying to focus it more on the north end of town where you can see that there's a lack of green space. And this, as you can imagine, this is also around where income levels are, right? So we know that more middle and upper income are more closely located near green space and park space. So the Greenway was really a justice-oriented project as well, really looking at lower income communities and tying them into our downtown center. So we knew that we needed to raise money, and we set our targets on City Council. We knew that our city had the money, or at least the access to money, to fund infrastructure projects of this size. However, funding at this level was unprecedented. So we needed broad community support. I remember clearly sitting down at Little Grill with my old friend and sociology professor, Bruce, and we literally charted out on a napkin all the lists, all the groups of people that we needed to reach, that we thought that we could persuade to help to get 3 votes for council. And we talked about why each group might be interested in this project. From there, we went to work with our teams. We had endless small group meetings. We started to attack social media and really start to imagine what project was going to look like, even though it didn't exist yet. We reached out to kids and older folks, and this is actually the president of one of our local universities talking about what he was excited about for the project, really sort of expanding the voices that were talking about this, right? We weren't just a bunch of hippie activists, but everybody was involved in this project. We had, again, small group meetings in people's homes to raise private donations as well to supplement both my time and other things that we were doing. We had a series of events in desirable locations in our downtown that we thought would attract different groups of people. And we really started to build people's relationship with the Greenway itself. And so it actually runs along Black's Run, which is a stream that runs through the center of our town. And we did a cutback day, an event right on the Greenway to show people where it was, how beautiful this space could really be. And we teamed up with our local bicycle coalition that was very successful advocates within the city and had very strong relationships with our city council, or at least some of the city council members. Historically, the organization I was working with did not have the strongest ties with the coalition at the time. And I can make some assumptions that I think our group was more activist-oriented, where the coalition was more advocate-oriented. But bringing those groups together really made for a powerful force, especially to our city staff and city government. We hosted a candidate forum with 4 other organizations across economic development, education, transportation lines, really brought together a cross-sector of interests involved in the project. We really created a discussion about why the Greenway needed to be funded, and we asked for people to actually say where they stood on this issue. We were able to really escalate bicycling and transportation as a key issue that people had to take a stance on. And we spent some time at City Council chambers, not once, but twice. First on Valentine's Day, hence the love theme, and then in October. This was the first round where we gave an update. We packed the chamber with over 200 people. They said that this was the most full they'd ever seen council chambers for a project. And then this was again in November when we were actually making the request for funding. And this is the party we had to celebrate. So we were able to leverage $600,000 from our city and an additional $400,000 for another greenway project in town. This was together over $1 million was given, and this is the largest amount of money that our city has ever given to a bicycle infrastructure project in one allotment. That got matched with a statewide grant, and that brought us up over $2 million, and by that time, we'd already won. All right. So the third and last failure that I want to talk about actually has to do with my entire career, which is short-lived, right? Only about 7 years at this point. Well, so I attribute much of who I am and what I've accomplished to one simple fact that I often don't share with people. And that's that I actually failed at what I set out to do. I'm not the kind of person who has one passion. I'm passionate about systems that work for everyone and not just those who can afford it. You see, the picture you saw of my brother and I, we grew up in working-class New York with my mom and my grandma. My mom has struggled with under- and unemployment for for quite some time, I'll say. And my grandma is in a government-subsidized home that really just feels like a glorified hospital. We used social services, and we knew things were tight all the time. But college was going to be my ticket out, right? So came down to Virginia, far enough away from home, but close enough to drive. I studied sociology while working my way through college to better understand systemic classism and racism, all of the isms. I learned Spanish, I traveled, I protested, I worked towards revolution. I took off time from college. I dropped out twice so that I could work to pay my bills. While friends moved to big cities and worked internships or traveled the world after college, I held tightly to jobs that could pay for rent, my crushing student loans, and to send money home when I could. You always get a little tear when you talk about your moms, right? Then somewhere between working and dreaming, I became a connector and a creator. I helped to start a restaurant to build community and the arts, and I helped to build a co-op to increase community help. I worked with my neighbors to fund a greenway that could be an accessible and beautiful way to get from A to B. And now I help communities return grocery stores to their towns when the big box stores leave. Though this isn't what I wanted to do, I actually aspired to be an activist. This whole time, starting a restaurant, raising some money, this was all just fun jobs to buy my time while my real calling came. And then it did. I was invited to work with a volunteer collective for a regional activist training center. I thought, I have arrived. But after a few months working on that project, my heart just wasn't in it. I found myself missing deadlines, dreading the events and the conference calls, and not following through. I felt horrible that I was letting so many people down, especially myself. This is what I thought I wanted, right? This is the work, the most important work of the world. But something was missing. I didn't have a deep connection with the people I was working with. I wasn't on the front line with them because I was on the front line someplace else, where I lived. And so I stepped down, and yes, I disappointed a lot of the people who meant a lot to me. But years later, I was sitting in Jack Brown's in Harrisonburg, and a longtime friend who was actually a city council member, he came up to me and said, "What's the best community organizer in Harrisonburg plotting these days?" I said, "What? No, I failed. I tried to do that." But I just smiled, I laughed awkwardly, and changed the subject. A few months later, I was at a birthday party, and I found myself talking with a friend who I met during the co-op days. He's a very respected organizer. He runs a cultural center in town and is a really respected leader, especially in our local African-American community. And as we were talking, he handed me this key. And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "There's an Underground Railroad Club that meets here in town. And we'll let you know when there's a meeting of the keys. And that's when you come. There hasn't been a meeting yet, but I'm really waiting for that call." So what I learned, that even though I wasn't picketing with union members, I wasn't interpreting for recently arrived immigrants, I was organizing for change. My journey has just taken a different path. So, Hilariously enough, I was featured on a local magazine called Bloom, and my brother perfectly used it for fodder during his toast at my wedding. And in this article was this one line that really spooked me. And it spooked me because before it was published, I actually took a job nationally. I wouldn't be working in Harrisonburg anymore, and a lot of people didn't know that. So without Harrisonburg, what am I? And now, which is news to the Harrisonburg people in the room, is I'm moving to Portland, Oregon. Will what I've learned transfer there? So when I think about placemaking and I go back to Poesis and ourselves as makers in the world, for me, it's not the place, it's the people. So when we talk about getting shit done, it has everything to do with the people and the processes that we're a part of. And these are the two things that we don't focus on a lot, right? It's easy to focus on the timeline and the project and the money. There's always enough money if we have the right people. But the progress, the momentum, and the bumps and the dysfunction, they start and end with how effectively communication lines are built and maintained or cut and shut down. Can you think of someone or a group of people who are currently in your way? How can we create safe places for listening for everyone in our community? So with that, I leave you with one last thought. Please build coalitions and not empires around your project. Groups of people who understand power, who understand how they're aligned, they can reactivate and remobilize around any issue and any project. One project will not be the silver bullet. And if anything, I guess I want to be against measuring our actions in only outcomes, and instead see how people like me and like you can inspire people towards different processes. And don't be an idiot. Thanks.